Local councils could take a leaf out of the military's book. It took Air Force field engineers just 3 weeks to create this brand new 1.5 kilometre gravel road to handle some of the 24,000 cars expected to arrive at the Williamtown base over the weekend. The man in charge of controlling the chaos, Wing Commander John Bennett, says with some patience from the public, everyone will get a park.
So we've got, for the public, 5 access points. This one off Cabbage Tree Road, another one down at the airport off Williamtown Drive, another one a bit further round on Nelson Bay Road, which is Slade Road, and then 2 off Medowie Road, which is the main road which goes past the base.
The car parks will be open from 7 a.m. Pedestrian entry to the show itself opens at 8. Flying displays run from 12:30 till 4, gates close at 5 and disabled access is through the main gate off Medowie Road. Passengers using Newcastle Airport are being urged to arrive 3 hours before their scheduled flight as commercial planes will be taking off and landing in between airshow displays. A unique feature of the day will see pedestrians periodically crossing the main runway on foot as they walk between car parks and the displays.
Later in the morning there will be traffic hold-ups, but just please obey the controllers out on the roads, and we're working behind the scenes to try and divert traffic and ease the problems as they occur.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
In local sport, it doesn't get much bigger. The Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Grand Final is on tomorrow, followed by the league decider on Sunday. But fans might have a hard time getting to number 1 sports ground. Scheduled track work means there'll be no trains between Scone and Newcastle or Sydney and Newcastle. That's quite a headache when teams on Grand Final weekend come from affected areas.
I think it's a very poor decision. It just shows a lack of coordination and a lack of thought for this city by State Rail.
Add to that the fact 2,000 passengers will head to Dyke Point tomorrow to board the Pacific Sun cruise ship, and of course the Defence Force Air Show, and you have a recipe for transport chaos.
In future, the planning does need to not only look at the road network and make sure that there's work with the RTA, but importantly, public transport, and I don't think RAF has done that this time.
City Rail apparently made the decision to schedule the track work back in 2005.
I think it's just typical, unfortunately, of the disorganisation that's apparently here in our local region regarding public transport. I mean, if we had a local authority, which we've been pushing for a long, long time, you wouldn't have these things that happen.
Buses will replace trains until early Monday morning. Commuters are being urged to allow an extra hour travel time each way. Kate Mitchell, NBN News.
This money will allow us to do some really concrete things, to undertake survey work, geotechnical work, consultation with stakeholders and preliminary road design, and they are necessary before we can actually undertake work.
It's the most unusual call to arms.
My proposal is we all get in our cars, drive down to Sydney, block Macquarie Street, take our keys out of our cars, sit on the footpath and say, until you talk to us, until you give us what we deserve as a community, we don't want to play anymore.
Restaurateur Neil Slater floated the idea at a Fix Our City meeting. He believes the only way the state government will spend money to revitalise Newcastle CBD is if it's forced. And he says a 3,000-strong blockade of cars stretching from Hyde Park to the Opera House would make a point.
I don't want to have any more talking. I think the talking's over. We've got plans coming out our bazoo. We've got more people who've done more planning than you can poke a stick at.
Mr Slater's radical protest idea already has the support of other Newcastle heavyweights.
That sort of activity may be required. The state government have got to understand that their treatment of this city of Newcastle is not satisfactory. And if we've got to do those sorts of things, well then I think we need to do it.
How do we get this message through to the government that we need help and assistance up here and the city is dying? I think Neil's idea is a great idea.
So you'll be driving your car down there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well, Neil and I could travel down together.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A lot of people come with no idea at all. Very few people come with preconceptions, but mostly people are quite happy to be let down nicely, and if they discover it isn't really valuable, well, that's all part of life.
The display pilots unleashed the beasts over Williamtown today for an airshow rehearsal. Those who were tipped off about the practice session packed vantage points near the base in roadside parking areas that will be no-go zones across the weekend.
And rather than come tomorrow with the 900,000 people and the buses and all the rest of it, we thought we'd come here, park the car and watch.
As the pilots ran through their finely tuned manoeuvres overhead, members of the 3 Squadron were treating their families to an open day to celebrate the unit's 94th birthday. Among those taking part, Second World War pilot Tom Russell, who flew with the squadron in Kitty Hawks across North Africa in 1942 and 43. The 93-year-old still loves his fighters.
It's absolutely incredible what they can do, but of course, in our own way, we could do similar things, but not in that capability. We could throw the aircraft around the air as well, but to see that flying done then, that's just almost beyond belief.
A couple of things on display here today. We've got the aeroplanes and the equipment, but the most precious things are the veterans, the people that formed the squadrons and gave its character and spirit. They are living history, and it's fantastic to have them here today and be able to talk to them and share some of those experiences.
Kids of all ages will have the opportunity to sit in the cockpit of a Hornet over the weekend, and when your dad is the commanding officer, you don't miss a trick.
Oh, it's fast, manoeuvreable, probably one of the best jets ever, and yeah, Dad's the pilot as well.
Helicopters and warbirds are also being assembled for what promises to be one amazing weekend.
We can't figure out how he got there. It's well beyond us. He might have hitched a ride. He might have got out on the highway and said, "I want to go north." Here we go. So off he went. But now he's back. He's safe.
Far from a casual observer, David Eland from the Northern New South Wales Federation knows only too well what impact the loss of an A-League franchise would mean for the region.
Well, look, we're obviously concerned. We're watching with interest.
But the Federation's boss admits there's little else it can do.
We're not in a position to fund an A-League club. We're here primarily to put grassroots programs and services in place. You and I both know the organisation's equity would be gone within a season if we were to fund an A-League club.
Eland denies there's been any moves for the Federation to take on the franchise with the backing of the FFA should Jets owner Con Constantine be unable to support it. Rather, it's community backing that will ultimately save the franchise.
Whether it's Con, whether it's another owner, the football community and the business community need to get right behind this club. Gate receipts are the lifeblood of any A-League club, and it's obvious that there's just not enough people going to the game at the moment.
Ironically though, the Federation's award presentation evening clashes with tonight's Jets home game, meaning many members of the region's football community won't be able to attend. At a time, every crowd member will count. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Maitland has mowed down all before it on a heady run to the grand final, and while the captain got one hand on the trophy today, he's planning to take full possession tomorrow.
Very exciting. The town and the club are right behind us at the moment, so yeah, all the boys are really enjoying it and looking forward to the game.
It's 11 years since the Blacks' last grand final appearance, which they won. Qualification this year has helped spark a level of interest in Maitland not seen in years, with the city's league team to contest its grand final on the same ground the following day.
People come out to us in the street congratulating us and saying they'll be come down here, and people that we never even met before, so it's really exciting.
Having survived 3 sudden death matches to reach the decider, including an emotion-charged win over minor premiers Merewether, only Hamilton remains in Maitland's way. But the Hawks are riding their own wave of emotion. After several years, coach Scott Coleman is moving on next season, while captain Dan Palmer is also planning to step down, and that only provides extra motivation.
Probably not going to go around again, but as I said, the club means a lot to me, and if there was a shortage of some sort, I'd always put my hand up again.
The week off for the Hawks has only helped Anderson medal winner Var Talia-Lever confirm his place in the big one, and everyone knows how important that is.
For him not to play tomorrow, you have to have something pretty serious wrong with him.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Paul Lobb at RAF Base Williamtown, checking the final preparations for this weekend's Defence Force Air Show. Also tonight, our own Top Gun Gavin Morris brings you the weather live.
100 years of history went up in smoke at around 2 o'clock this morning. A burnt-out shell, all that remains of the two-storey terrace, which was recently vacated.
Police were patrolling High Street, Maitland, and they noticed smoke and flames coming from an unoccupied premises.
The building was completely engulfed when emergency services arrived, including 7 fire crews. High Street was closed for a number of hours as they battled the intense flames. A crime scene was established once the fire was brought under control at around 3 a.m.
And we're waiting for structural engineers to give the all clear for the place to be examined.
An adjoining business was also damaged in the blaze. Police haven't ruled out arson.
Detectives from Central Hunter Local Area Command are currently investigating the circumstances surrounding the fire, and we welcome any assistance from the public.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
It's been 25 years since anything like this has taken place at Williamtown's RAF base. Dozens upon dozens of historic and serving military aircraft taking to the sky in a mind-blowing display of skills and precision. Red Bull air racer Matt Hall was first in the skies. His tiny plane punches well above its weight, able to pull more G-force than an FA-18.
Normally, I'm very focused on just racing, so this is a fun event for me. I'm really having a good time today.
The F-111s performed their swan song. After 40 years in service, the fleet retires at the end of the year. What better way to go out than with a bang? As one era ended, another began, with the F-111's replacements, the Super Hornets, performing their first public display, reaching speeds of up to 1,100 kilometres an hour. Seasoned pilots seemed to enjoy the day just as much as spectators.
It's really an honour and a privilege to be able to fly in such a big air show.
Philip Frawley has got 36 years of flying experience behind him, and boy does it show. Some of the feats he's performing are absolutely amazing.
Marvellous, I've really enjoyed it, yes.
It's been magnificent today, just really loud though, so.
Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Loving every minute of it.
A 65-year-old black cat flew in from Wollongong.
And as it flies at the moment, it's the only black cat flying in the world and the only militarised Catalina in the world that's flying currently.
And a personal journey was taken aboard Boomerang Miss Imogen.
The aircraft that you see behind you is in fact the aircraft that my dad flew during the Second World War, so a great family connection.
6 roulettes defied gravity in a show of aeronautical aerobatics. And the RAF's verdict of the air show's first day.
So far, it's been a huge success.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The two sides play with contrasting styles, and that was certainly on show in the first half. Not surprisingly, record-breaking point scorer Christian Punch helped Maitland take an early lead. Hamilton preferred running rugby, but it was a short dart from Eric Lalia that caught everyone off guard. Punch's boot was flawless, but the Hawks' Brendan Holliday struggled early. Hamilton's Monty Symes added a touch of individual brilliance, kicking for himself before diving over out wide. Minutes later, the Hawks' Ivan Walking did plenty of running from the base of the scrum. Christian Punch kept Maitland in the fight. Despite his 5 goals, the Blacks trailed by 9 at the break. The Hawks suffered a blow early in the second half with captain Dan Palmer given 10 in the bin. Unfazed, Hamilton scored 2 tries, Troy Kempnich crashing over to extend the lead to 21. But the Blacks refused to go quietly. James Johnston somehow managed to squeeze inside the corner flag, before Dan Runchell got Maitland back within 12. With time running out, John Runchell used himself as a battering ram. The Blacks now trail by 5 with 3 minutes remaining. But it was too little, too late, as the Hawks sent coach Scott Coleman out a winner.
Words can't explain it. The boys are put in. Not many really expected us to do it halfway through the year, but yeah, it was great, gutsy effort out.
Playing game number 60 at Energy Australia Stadium, the Jets were hoping for a bigger turnout. The boss didn't seem fazed and soon had plenty to smile about as his captain eased the tension of another trying week. 2 minutes later, Newcastle could have gone further in front. The Jets were creating the most chances, Zhang Shu just inches wide. Returning from suspension, Ruben Zadkovic was a constant threat. Perth's best move of the half fell to Robbie Fowler, who couldn't find the target. In the second half, Zadkovic picked up where he left off, this shot glancing off the bar. The icing on the cake came late as Labino Haliti did his best to bring the fans back to football.
For some, a dream come true. A day to celebrate and show off an Aussie icon.
Biggest Tirana gathering ever in Australia.
And they're still sounding good after all these years.
Tirana, even Ford fans, I think have got a soft spot for the Tirana, and I've had the car for 20 years and love it to death.
What a ride it's been. From the racetrack to the showroom floor. It started with the HB in 1967 and ended with the UC in 78. It seems there was nothing the Tirana couldn't do, and some just can't let go.
You've even got the fluffy dice here. Some might say you're living in the past.
Well, you know, you got to stay young somehow, don't you?
There's a story behind every one, but this is perhaps the most famous. Forensic was the car that helped clear Michael Chamberlain's ex-wife, Lindy.
I brought it out today for the first time. It's 30 years since the death of my daughter, and I thought I would celebrate true forensic science with it.
For these car lovers, the Tirana itself is an exact science, a model car that will long be the king of the road.
I don't think the Tirana will ever die.
Nat Wallace, NBN News.
The Battle of the Coalfields was always going to be a bruising encounter, and from the opening whistle both sides tried to assert some authority. The Pickers made the most of their first attacking raid as Daniel Randall raced over virtually untouched. The reserve hookers had plenty of influence in the first half. Cessnock's Matt Marshall injected life into the Goannas' attack. His short kick set up Luke Gardner. A penalty to Cessnock then handed the Goannas their first lead. Not to be outdone, Maitland's reserve rake Luke Matheson got the Pickers going forward. He laid on the second try for Ash Hazelton. In front, 12-8, Maitland's discipline went out the window. The Goannas spread the ball and went close to bridging the gap, but finished just centimetres wide. At the other end, Randall made Cessnock pay, Maitland pushing out to a 10-point lead. The hits kept on coming as the Goannas tried to bash their way back. A long-range effort got them into great field position before Brad Grant appeared to be stripped. The referee saw it differently and it proved to be a game-changing decision. On the next set, the Pickers' Jade Porter made the break before Big Willie Paleo put the exclamation point on Maitland's 16-point win.
You know, to get this honour at this stage in my career, it's sensational. And I apologise to the 35,000 people who have went through a little bit of pain and they have to look at my mug.
It's been hard to miss the bright red vessel over the past few months, but today came an opportunity to get up close and personal with a renaming ritual and unveiling. Formerly the Scandi Bergen, a Norwegian commercial oil and gas supply ship, the 106-metre vessel will now be known as the Ocean Protector.
It's a vessel that is an important contribution to our border protection. It will be involved in surveilling Australian waters, particularly in the south, the southern waters.
Its main role will be detecting and deterring illegal fishing, but it will also be used in northern waters.
And it will be involved from time to time, if required, in irregular arrivals and the transportation of those arrivals.
The Home Affairs Minister joined local MP Sharon Grierson and customs bosses on the ship's bridge, while deep within the vessel, 154 Jack's workers are continuing the modification job, including the finishing touches to detainee holding rooms. Built in 2007, the Ocean Protector also has a helipad for medical evacuations and can bust through ice just over half a metre thick.
It has a capability far better than its predecessor. It can actually go 600 nautical miles further south than its predecessor.
Refit work will be complete in a month. The total contract is worth $158 million. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
No one's touched this man's story in decades. And when it comes to William Dobell, there's so much to tell.
I'm afraid it was all-consuming. Sometimes the house didn't get cleaned. My husband had to cook his own meals.
On the surface, Sir William was one of Australia's finest artists, a 3-time Archibald Prize winner. His portraits adorn famous magazines, and they're even part of our everyday life.
He was different in his painting. He followed no great school of art, and nobody followed him.
But for a man who loved the serenity of his Wangi home, fame was hard to canvas.
I think it's a bit like an iceberg. You know, we've seen a small amount on the top of the water and there's a hell of a lot underneath.
Art aside, he loved nothing more than his mates and the local RSL.
That's the main thing. He was just a nice, great bloke.
And one whose story will live on, even in death. Nat Wallace, NBN News.
She's a beautiful, healthy baby girl, blissfully unaware of her unusual birthplace. But it's sure to be a story little Madeline hears for years to come.
I went into labour on the bus. They were irregular contractions. And then halfway to Newcastle, my waters broke and I had my baby on the bus.
Christine Pinter started getting contractions at Sydney's Central Station, but wanted to make it home. Buses replaced trains between Sydney and Newcastle over the weekend, and along the F3 freeway, Baby decided it was time.
And I just put my head down and concentrated on what I had to do.
Madeline came into the world in front of dozens of surprised passengers, but it didn't bother Mum or the bus driver.
He was fantastic. He kept driving until we connected with the ambulance, and then we pulled over to the side of the highway, and the ambulance collected me, and I had the baby in my arms and I was taken to hospital.
As a result, Madeline's birth certificate reads rather differently to most. It says she was born on a bus near the Toronto exit. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
This group represents some of the region's best footballers, both past and present. All are Socceroos, and recognition of that came today with a presentation of specially designed caps bearing their number in the list of Australian players since 1922.
How does that feel, mate?
It feels good, and it's unusual to get a cap to fit my big head, but no, it's good.
Mate, what number are you?
374, so yeah, kind of middle of the road. I think there's about 500 now, so not too early, but not too late either.
It was an emotional event for many who've waited a long time for such an honour, including 1974 World Cup rep Cole Curran.
It's everything like putting the green and gold on again. Every time you walked out and played in front of a game and a crowd, it's just like putting that on again. It's beautiful.
12 players were honoured today, among them 4 of the current Jet squad, and everyone wants to know what fate awaits them, given the tough financial state the A-League is in.
If soccer leaves this time, it'll be probably gone.
Yeah, you're really worried about it?
Yeah, I am really worried about it because it's a breeding ground.
The team continues to prepare for Wednesday's match on the Gold Coast, but Jeremy Brockie and Tarek Elrich won't make that trip. Ironically, the Gold Coast is facing its own issues after a record low crowd of just over 2,000 attended its match last night.
Speaking to some of the Gold Coast players, they prefer playing away. It's got to that stage where they feel that there's more atmosphere when they play away, and you can't blame them.
Only a few years ago, it was feared Maitland would be lost from top-grade rugby league for good. Now it's won the top 2 grades in the competition. For captain Joel Osborne, victory was particularly sweet, having tasted grand final defeat before.
The mateship in the club is amazing. They all stick together. They love being together at training, and it shows on the field. They dig in for each other, and I can't be more proud of them.
PJ Ellis was one of those. Injured 2 months ago and rated no chance of making it back in time, he played most of the match, which will be long remembered.
Boys done all the hard work in the last 8-9 rounds to get us here. Just proud to be a part of it.
Former Cessnock player Colby Schrader was named man of the match, yet he spared a thought for his old teammates. Having played in the last 3 deciders, the Goannas have finished runner-up each occasion.
At the moment, I'm just numb. I just never seen that coming, and it's a tough one to lose this one.
Maitland Rugby felt a little the same after losing the Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Grand Final to Hamilton, but the Blacks promise to be back again next year.
We've only achieved the tip of the iceberg this year. We've got a very young club, got a great Colts base coming through, so there's going to be plenty more to come.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
And she had too much protein as a young baby, Signet. So what's happened is the muscles grow too much for the bones, so the bones don't grow in normal rate to the muscle. So the muscle outweighs the weight of the wing.
They already have plenty of big boys' toys. Now Xstrata has its very own train set. The company showed off 48 wagons today. Soon it'll have 300 and they'll be full of Hunter coal. The trains will haul black gold from 14 mines through 7 Xstrata coal load points in the Hunter, including Liddell and Mount Owen. Their destination, the Port of Newcastle, for shipping to Asia. Xstrata believes having its own haulage capability will help it move more coal more quickly.
The trains and the port and the track have been a constraint for our business in the past. Launching our own trains gives us an opportunity to take control of our business.
Currently, Xstrata sends 32 million tonnes of coal to the port each year. That will rise with the addition of the Mangoola and Ulan West mines, as well as the yet-to-be-announced Ravensworth North operation.
So we will go from 14 to 17 to 18 mines over time, and over the next 5 years, almost doubling our tonnage to the system.
Xstrata will also continue to use some Pacific National trains.
We've replaced some existing contracts that we had to provide rail services, but now we have a very significant proportion of our coal haulage capacity with our own trains.
Newcastle-based companies Bradken and United Group have built the 300 wagons and 10 locomotives. The whole project's worth $130 million. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. It's been a special day for these 14 budding sailors, many of whom have never been on a yacht.
Tad scary, but I think I have faith in the people that we're with, and I think we'll do fine. I'm quite looking forward to it.
The group included youngsters living with visual impairments and their carers. They got the chance not only to sail but also skipper Cale, a Sydney to Hobart racing yacht all around Newcastle Harbour. It was the first time a Sailors with Disabilities team has visited the region, but Carol Powell says it won't be the last.
I saw Sailors with Disabilities in Sydney and I knew that they did sailing up and down the coast, but they had never been to Newcastle. And I thought, well, why not? And they better come. So it's taken 4 years of gentle harassment.
Sydney to Hobart competitor Mark Whiteman was on deck, happy to share his experiences.
Because I was so fortunate to get involved in Sailors with Disabilities, and at such short notice too, got the chance to go and do the Sydney to Hobart. You know, it's good to give something back.
He says sailing is a sport anyone can master.
This boat has had so many people with so many different disabilities on it, and once you're on this boat, everybody's in the same boat, literally. You know, the disabilities just seem to disappear.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Two-year-old Shadow suffers from angel wings. Most swans with the painful condition are euthanased, but he's no ordinary bird. Shadow lives at the Hunter Wetland Centre among extremely rare freckled ducks. Until his arrival, the ducks who were bred in captivity simply refused to enter the water. So this foster dad stepped in.
And the Wetland Centre actually has a breeding program for them and trying to reintroduce them back into the wild. So behaving like a normal wild bird, learning from a swan is actually awesome.
Last month, Shadow had to have one wing partially amputated. Today it was time to operate on the other.
This part from here will amputate. So in humans it will be probably this part that we take off. So this is what you can imagine it. So this is the part that's rotating outwards and that's damaging all these feathers and is causing him discomfort and pain.
The procedure was fairly intricate. Prepping the wing took 90 minutes before surgery could begin.
We make a skin incision and then take the various tissues in layers. So we look at the blood vessels, and Anna is clamping those off with hemoclips.
After 3 hours, the wing was sewn up and bandaged.
Once we can take off the bandage and the new feathers will start growing, he will look perfect.
The operation cost the centre around $2,000. Money well spent, even though it can't really afford it.
It'd be great if we could have the public together to come in and try to help us with the whole cost of this.
And after a few groggy moments, Shadow's on his way to a full recovery. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
When he arrived at Newcastle almost 4 months ago, Marcello Fiorentini knew he'd have to bide his time, but now he's ready to take his shot. With injuries to Jeremy Brockie and Tarek Elrich, the Italian has forced his way into the squad to play the Gold Coast.
I want to play, I want to show, to keep off the dust on my shoulders, and that's it.
Having not played a match since May back in Italy, he's worked on building up strength to compete in the more physical A-League, but nerves won't be a problem, not with football anyway.
Absolutely no nervous. I'll be nervous if my girlfriend say me she's pregnant. Excited. I mean, the right nervous, the positive nervous.
While he's likely to start from the bench, Brodie Moy has won a spot in the side as well. The attacking style won't change, with the coach keen to build momentum after the Jets' first win last Friday.
I don't want the players to think we beat Perth and that's it. You know, we've shown that we'll do anything to survive.
He'd love this stat to continue. Heading into tomorrow night's match, Gold Coast has not scored at Skilled Park in 494 minutes. That's more than 8 hours. Another 3 minutes and it's an Australian record. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Chief must be the fittest Labrador around, and he has to be to keep owner Jane Mountford company on her training runs. The Newcastle triathlete has just completed a World Championship double in Budapest, winning her age group for the second year running, and she admits that was something of a surprise.
When I crossed the line, I actually thought I'd come third because the commentator had an accent, and I thought he'd said third champion. And it wasn't for another 5 or 10 minutes that someone said I'd won, and it actually said world champion.
But she's ruled out a chance of completing a hat-trick in China next year, instead turning her attention to an even more gruelling event, the Port Macquarie Ironman. The preparation for that will be intense, but it seems that's the attraction.
I just love doing it. There's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of fun, and it's just good being with so many like-minded people.
Jane hasn't ruled out a return to the World Championships in 2 years, and she plans to continue competing a long way past that.
Till I can't. Yeah, there was a guy there this year, he was in his 80s, there are plenty in the 70s, and yeah, it's just such fun.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.